Well, I guess I will go ahead and get this meeting started. I want to welcome everybody here today for the Tucson Metro Chamber's Knowledge at Noon. Today, our speaker is Linda Welter, who is the principal and CEO of the Caliber Group. And she'll be talking to us today about leading and making decisions during tough times. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Linda. And if everybody will please mute yourself, that will help in making the meeting easier for everyone to hear.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. We are finding ourselves in unprecedented times, and the time for leadership and managing our organizations is so critical to come out on the other end of this successfully. So today's presentation is all about leadership and making tough decisions during this uncertain time. So a little bit about me before we jump into the call. I'm a member of the Tucson Chamber Board of Directors and have been working very hard to help businesses succeed in our community. And I've been doing that for at least 2 decades, and even before this crisis, long before this crisis hit. So like many of you on the call today, I'm also a business owner. Our company, the Caliber Group, helps businesses grow and build value through brand positioning, communication, and leadership strategies. And over the past 2 decades, we've had the opportunity to work with many excellent leaders and also to help them navigate change, to help their companies reposition and grow through both bad times as well as good times. Tomorrow and Friday, my colleagues Bree Richmond and Carrie Stratford will also be presenting a Knowledge at Noon, and they'll be talking about additional communications, social media, and marketing strategies to help businesses communicate and engage with their key audiences. So if you have not already done so, please sign up for their webinars. I understand sign up needs to happen at least a day prior to the start of the webinar, so I promise your time will be well worth every minute. But today I'm going to share some practical leadership strategies that we've learned along the way, working with more than 200 businesses over the past 2 decades. And these strategies will help you to make decisions, help you to communicate more effectively, and help to position your company to perform with excellence during this disruptive time. So the first part that I'm going to talk about today is leadership tips to help you find focus and increase your team's productivity. So finding focus really begins with understanding how to find your grit and how to develop resistance to navigate this time. Most of us might be experiencing resistance right now, resistance to all that's happening in our world, especially after spending hours, many of you spending hours applying for the payroll protection program. Our world has changed, and it's very important to be a successful leader that we must move from resistance to resilience as quickly as possible to succeed. So how do we move from resistance to all the negativity that's happening in our world to find our resilience? Well, one of the best strategies to do that is I call it the 4 R's. It's to recharge, reframe, review, and reflect on what's happening to your business right now to help you find your resilience. One of the most important things to remember at this time is remember what got you here today in your business will definitely impact how you get over there on the other side of this. So distancing yourself from the current situation and asking yourself, how do I want to look back 1 year from now on how I as a leader led during this time. Write down how you want to look back 1 year from now on how you led during this time, and that'll help you shape and define your business strategy, which we will talk about in a little bit. So it's really important to focus on what's in your control, because there's so much that's out of your control right now. You can't change the circumstance, but you can focus on what's in your control. And most importantly, focus on yourself. You have control over your actions. Your customers, your team, and your company all need you to stay focused to survive this crisis. So first, focus on helping others, your employees, your customers, your vendors, your partners, and your community. Understand that's what is going on with your people is unlike anything they've experienced before. Check in. How are they feeling? How are they doing? Take time out of every day to reach out and check in with all of your key stakeholders to see how they're feeling. Communication is key. Focus on showing empathy to all of your stakeholders right now. Put them first. It's also really important to stay cool under pressure and lead with both courage and heart. Try to be your most positive and productive self. You know, I think many of us pride ourselves on thinking that we are the ultimate multitaskers. I know I, for one, have been very proud of all the things that I can accomplish in a given hour. But the fact is multitasking on steroids is like the #1 most easy way for you to get completely distracted and not focusing on the most important things that you need to focus on right now. Also, this remote working can also add a whole other level of distractions. Some of you are basically homeschooling right now. Others of you are managing pets barking in the background. There's all kinds of distractions that are happening at home, and focusing is really key. The fact is your brain can really only focus on a few things at once, and it's best to focus on one thing, especially the higher value or the higher impact that it has on your business. Worry and cortisol right now, with stress levels being high, can really adversely affect our brain and the decisions that we make. Also, inner talk right now, your inner critics, past old storylines about maybe how you navigated a prior recession or an economic downturn. It's really important that you quiet those inner critics right now that are running in your head. They're also a really strong form of distraction. As a leader, you really have to learn how to turn down the distractions. They'll take you away from the things that you really need to focus on right now. So stop the noise and take control over what you're thinking. Focus on mindfulness. Engage in all parts of your mind to be present and in the moment, so you can keep a calm composure under pressure. Mindfulness helps you to be thoughtful and strategic. Just want to share a little story. This was probably 10, 15 years ago. It was a long time ago in my business, and I really learned a lesson the hard way. And I remember one day, I think a major client had cut their budget drastically, and it came to us at a really big surprise. We weren't expecting it at all, and I was really stressed and distracted from this particular incident. But my motto was, I'm just going to forge through. I'm going to just put my head down and work, and I'm going to replace that lost business immediately. And I remember one day, one of our employees said to me, you know, you need to know that when you are stressed, we are stressed. And I had no idea that even though I was trying to fake it, that the stress was really showing on my face. And all that did was serve to make my team feel more stressed. So if you're having one of those moments and you're distracted from some negative news, whatever it is, it's really important that you find a way in your own way to cover that. And I'm not talking about not being authentic and true, but there's a time and a place when your employees feel that you don't have things under control, then that creates even more fear in their minds and what they already have. So if you need to go out in your car and, you know, take a little drive when something really bad happens, or if you need to go for a walk, run, whatever your method is, hide the stress so that you can keep a calm, cool composure, especially right now. Your team really needs you to be that calm, confident leader right now. So it's also important for us to understand how our brain works when making key decisions. You know, right here in the front of your brain, your prefrontal cortex is where the ration and reasoning happens when you're solving a problem. And it's really important that that part of your brain is taking control and taking over when you are needing to make a very critical, important decision for the success of your business. Emotion, the emotional part of your brain, is in the back of your brain. And when you lead or manage by emotion, it completely shuts down the prefrontal cortex of your brain. And so how many of you have been in a situation where a moment passed and you're just frozen in that moment? And you say to yourself, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that response then in the moment? And later you're kicking yourself for not thinking of that particular response. Well, that's because the emotional part of your brain has just kicked in and it's gripped your brain, and it didn't allow you to come forward with that problem solving that happens in the prefrontal cortex. And again, I'm not saying that you're not going to have emotion. You're going to have emotion, but understand when that emotion is kicking in and taking control of your brain when you're making key decisions. The other part, and this is just common sense, we all know it, but when we're working really long hours and we're stressed, we sometimes don't necessarily think about this, but your brain really needs 3 things to function well. It needs plenty of sleep, plenty of water, and it needs glucose. And if any one of those 3 are out of a balance, that can also adversely impact your decision making right now. So we've all seen stay healthy, take care of ourselves, be good to ourselves. That's really important when you're under a lot of pressure. The other thing that's really important to making good decision making is really understanding your work style, and also understanding the members of your team and their work style and what it takes to get into your zone or your workflow, which is really a definition of when you're most engaged. And believe it or not, studies have shown that you're actually 5 times more productive when you're working in your zone. So whatever you need to do to allow time for you to get into your zone is really important. So some of the ways that you can do that, and this, by the way, is also really great advice to share with your team, is set boundaries for your team and yourself on your time. So for example, group together or batch specific time frames for which you work on certain activities during each day and or during each week, and protect that time. Block your calendar, protect your time so that you can really get into the zone and you can focus on that one thing that's really important. And trust me, by doing that, you will be more productive and you will make better decisions. Some of you might find that that zone for you is at 5 a.m. in the morning, 7 a.m. in the morning. Others, it's midday when the phones tend to die down a little bit. And then for others, it can be late afternoon, early evening. And some of you, I'm seeing emails at midnight. So whatever your zone is, figure that out and work to your zone. Also, some other tips is to, in your office space, your remote office space, do what you need to do in that office space also to minimize distractions. Put things around you that lift your spirits, that are less cluttering, for example. Just do things so that you feel just as productive working remotely at home as you do or did in your office. So create a very clear and inspiring workspace to work in. So working remotely is really testing our company's culture. It's much more difficult to understand what's happening with your company culture because we're not all physically around each other and able to communicate face to face, in person, to see all of that person, to read all of their body language, or to have the kind of presence or the empathy that you can show in person versus on video. So it's really important. I mentioned earlier to communicate often and to touch base with all of your stakeholders. So it's important you're understanding again how your employees are feeling, and that you focus on reshifting your company's culture to really determine now, as you're working remotely, does your team still have really good trust and teamwork? If they don't, it's important that you work very hard to reestablish that trust. And again, you can do that through communication and most importantly on connection first. When you have good trust, you have good communication, and you have good connection with your team members, when you need to do a correction in your company, whether it be a correction of a single activity or it be a major repositioning or reshifting of your company, if the trust is there, the correction will come more easily. Your team will trust you and the new vision that you're sharing to move to the next direction. So it's really important right now, as you're working on your business contingency plan in the short term, as well as the long term, that that trust is still intact that you had before all of this hit. So adapting to the new normal, I think we've been hearing that term a lot lately about the new normal. What's going to shake out at the end of this can be a variety of different things. We know what our new normal is right now. So my best advice is work harder than you ever have at communicating with your team, your customers, and your stakeholders. Establish meeting rhythms and communication rhythms when you're communicating with all of your stakeholders. It's also important to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the technology and the tools that we're using to communicate. So some of you know this already. Email is great for communicating urgent and or complex long process information, long details, policy changes. For example, instant messaging tools like Slack are good for more urgent, short messages. Understand that audio is a good source for resolving conflict or having very complex discussions. And then video always beats audio for those types of discussions. And then most importantly, in person for those types of discussions is always the best, but we're challenged with that right now. So just understand the strengths of all of the tools. So next, it's really, really important that you yourself move to a very proactive mindset and also work with your team to work towards a proactive mindset. It's so critically important right now that everyone is looking at the future and they're looking at forward momentum, moving towards something. And in order to establish that toward or forward mindset, it's important that you develop goals for your in your business contingency plan, so your team feels confident that you guys are going to navigate this storm. It's also important to remain optimistic, but yet realistic. Nobody has all of the answers right now. It's too fluid of a situation. If you're too overly optimistic, your team and your customers won't believe you. This is just too serious of an impact. But yet, if you're cautiously optimistic and you have a good, solid plan behind it, people will have confidence and trust in you as a leader. So it's also really important in helping your team to move to a proactive mindset to routinely ask your team to share what they know, what they don't know, and what they need to get their jobs done well. That needs to happen on a daily or almost daily basis with every member of your team. And it also requires a separate meeting once or twice a week with your leadership team to touch base with those same questions. Learn how to lead and manage right now, understanding the difference between leading and managing. Leading really involves leading people and moving them and inspiring them to move in the right direction. And that is your job as a leader, to motivate, to challenge, to lead, to inspire. But there are times when leaders, especially during times of furloughs or layoffs, that leaders also need to manage and lead by example and get your hands dirty inside your work, whatever type of business you have. So it's important to plan, organize, and manage the process of things in addition to managing people at this time. Your team will respect you for it, and they will never forget that. You've heard some of the CEOs of national brands who have been cutting their salaries, and they're leading by example, showing, I am no different than all of you, all of my team, no matter what position you hold in my company. And so think about ways right now that you can demonstrate the sacrifice that you as a leader are willing to make right now for your organization to make sure that your organization comes out successfully at the end of this. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your business contingency plan, as well as your longer range plan to help you get out of this. So developing or updating, if you already have a business contingency plan, really involves these steps. First, identify the immediate challenges or threats that are going to seriously impact your business operations. I'm sure many of you have already been working on those most serious threats, and what kind of scenarios could play out with each of those threats. Everything from reduced sales to losing key team members to losing investor confidence, whatever those threats might be right now. Identify those and think about worst case and best case scenarios, and then develop an action plan for addressing each one of those challenges or threats. Your goal is to reconfigure your business to survive these current economic pressures. Create a very detailed plan for returning to scale and returning to business as usual as quickly as possible. But you can only do that by envisioning a new normal and how the business should reinvent itself to one day thrive. So update your sales and cash flow forecasts. Look at your fixed expenses. Identify those resources that you can and can't live without. And if needed, now is the time to cut costs to strengthen your cash position so that you have cash reserves to weather this economic downturn, which some are saying could last 3 months. Some are saying it could last through the end of the year. Nobody really knows. They just know that this is more severe than what we've experienced, at least in our lifetimes. So after you've developed an action plan to address each major issue, each challenge or threat that could really hurt your business, if you must reduce your workforce, do so. But be sure that you are cross-training your most integral employees and in how to take on other responsibilities and additional responsibilities if you need to shrink your workforce. It's important that you communicate each step of your plan to your team and then follow through on that and keep your team updated on all steps of the plan. And a little bit later in the presentation, I'm going to address how to have some of those tough talks with your team if you do need to reduce your workforce. And the other key part of this is we're getting new information every day. Some of us, as we sit here who've applied for the payroll protection program, are waiting to see A, if our applications have been approved, B, if they've been approved, will the SBA fund it, and then when will they fund it? And we know that that impacts many of our business strategies right now. So the information that we're receiving is changing on an almost a daily basis. So if you need to update your business plan on a daily basis, plan to do so. So when you do make decisions, whatever that may be, it's really important as a leader that you be a flexible and adaptive and decisive leader. So make smart decisions with the information that you have today. Again, make good decisions with the information that you have today and then move forward. Not making a decision is a decision in and of itself. So when you make the decisions with the information that you have today from sources that you can trust. So we all know, for example, we're turning to the CDC and WHO for healthcare tips, but regarding business information, financial information, industry information, trade information, marketplace information, turn to credible sources within all of those sectors to rely on information that you can trust to make good decisions. Take this one day at a time, but it's important that you adjust and modify your plan on the go. And it's important too that your team, who's used to very long range plans, that they understand that part of this new normal is requiring you as a leader to make decisions on the go. And we might get some new information 1 week from now that renders that decision the wrong decision. And it is what it is. You have to go forward with what you know today. So now I want to talk about the longer range vision for your business and how you can relook at your business and possibly reposition it to be something expanded, something different, or something completely different for the future. So I'm going to walk through some steps on how you can do that with the help of your team. But first, I want to talk about the strategy drivers that impact your growth. And all of these drivers should be factored into your business plan. So first, non-organic growth. Second, cost optimization, financial constraints, revenue optimization, market penetration, marketing positioning and development, and then diversifying your portfolio of products and services. All of these drivers on a day-to-day basis impact your growth, and as you're putting together your plan, it's important that you understand those drivers and what their current state are today and what you anticipate how they'll impact your business 6 months and 12 months from now. So, and in addition, product and service improvements, all of your systems and processes, your growth history. You know, what's happened in the past as you've weathered different downturns in our economy. Your talent, your key team members, your leadership team, and then your methods of measuring success. All of these are drivers that impact your growth. So as part of your planning, it's important that you look at the trends and signals that are happening in our marketplaces that either are currently and or will impact your business. So some of the different ways that we look at monitoring trends are journals, blogs, futurists, publications, or you know, various different trade media that are predicting the future, fringe thinkers, universities, and think tanks. Of course, a lot of our conferences, if not all of them now, are online and still going forward. So still staying within the community in which we do business and understanding what the leaders are saying and predicting as future consumer behaviors within the industries that we work. Our kids are great sources of predicting future trends in online viewing, arts and culture, and communication. And then of course social media is a good source, and then what's happening in the arts are all great sources to look for trends and signals that'll impact our business. So some questions to jot down to ask your team and ask yourself in putting together your longer range business plan. What is our new normal? Not only for 2020, but what might our new normal be for 2021? How will things change in the industries of our customers? How will consumer expectations shift? And then what services and products can we offer to address those changing consumer habits and expectations? And then what results can we expect? So start with the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Ask those questions. Don't take information at face value. Consider the source. So when you look at your team, you know, it's very common on your team to have the eternal optimist and the eternal pessimist. Right now, both of those folks on your team are really critical. You really do want to be hearing from your pessimist right now, because they can have you thinking about and planning for the worst. Now, we all hope that that doesn't happen, but it's really good to hear from your pessimist and to plan for the worst. At the same time, it's good to hear from your optimist, for example. So when you think about your team and who's providing input, it's really good to have diverse, full circle input from your team and sources that they might be getting information from. But again, credible sources. Any information on the outside, make sure that it's credible sources. You are basing really key, pivotal repositioning strategies based on the sources of information that you're getting. Don't make decisions out of fear. Never assume that you're right. Ask plenty of questions. And after you put together your plan, understand that it's not going to be a perfect plan. We mentioned earlier that you are adapting and changing as you go, but put together the best plan that you can today with the information that you have. Continue to keep your mission first and central and embrace it for the long view. But for the short view, you may have to adjust your mission just to survive. You might have to, for example, you've seen some of the companies out there that, 3M, for example, and other companies out there that are producing other products and services that we need in our healthcare system right now. It might not be something that you're doing for the long haul, but if you have an opportunity to fulfill an unmet need right now, and your systems, your processes, your teams, and your production capabilities are set to do that, then do that in the short term. Again, I ask the question, how do you want to be remembered as a leader during this time? Ask yourself, how will your business emerge after this time as a better company? What elements of your business need to be retired right now? And what processes should be eliminated? Take the time now to eliminate what is not mission critical. Eliminate what is not necessary. Simplify what is already overcomplicated, and combine things that should be done together. Outsource those things that are not part of your core, and then digitize or automate what is left. It's really critical right now that you look at all of those things. And then after you develop your plan, it's really important that your team and your leadership team embrace that plan and believe in it as you do. And some of your team members are going to be resistant to change. People are naturally wired to resist change. And we all know who those folks are within our offices, within our teams. Spend extra time with them, understanding how change is absolutely critical for your organization to survive, and for them as an individual in their organization to survive in the position that they're filling. Right now, everyone's focus should be on, what can I do to adjust and pivot to be successful? So after you've developed the plan, share it. Write it down and share it with your entire team. Writing it down makes it more likely to be achieved. Also, it's important as the leader of your organization to share your goals with an accountability partner. Whoever that might be. It could be a member of your team, it could be someone at home, it could be an executive coach that you're working with. Whoever it is, make sure that you're having regular check-ins for accountability. Now, many of you are saying, oh my gosh, I have so much on my plate right now. I'm trying to get an SBA loan. I'm trying to adjust my products and services. I'm trying to get them in full production. I'm trying to calm my team's fears. I'm trying to do so much at once. How can I possibly make time to do an updated plan for my business? I think the message here is it's important to crawl first before you walk and run. Even if you can put together, first of all, just getting your team together to put together the high-level plan and getting it down on a 1 or 2 page document is a great first start. But do it. Whatever you have to do, carve out time right now or very soon to do that plan. So I want to talk just a little bit about marketing in the new normal. As I mentioned at the start of our webinar today, my colleagues Bree Richmond and Carrie Stratford are going to be going into much more depth about marketing and communicating in our new normal. But I did want to take just a few minutes to talk about selling in today's environment. There have been lots of questions going around about how should I present my organization right now. And so I want to just address a few key points. Many of you are saying, well, I can't come across as being too salesy right now. If I look like, many people are suffering right now and I'm out, putting myself first, I appear to be insensitive. And how you do that, you could absolutely appear to be that. However, there's usually a long runway. We know as a marketing firm, there is a long runway to get your marketing together and to plan and prepare for it so that when you do come out, you're ready, you're polished, and you're effective. So my advice right now is start marketing earlier than you might be comfortable doing so that you're ready to come out when the time is right. Also, look at those niches that are actually growing right now, both current and as well as long term. What can you be doing within your current business operations to reimagine your business, to pivot, to sell to those growing niches? Blog posts, podcasts, webinars showcasing your capabilities and offerings. It's important that right now, today, that the information you're putting out is very helpful and it's value added to your key stakeholders. Being, very kind of in your face and salesy right now is not appropriate. But if you present the information in a way that's very helpful and will help improve someone's life that you're targeting through your blog posts, your podcasts, your webinars, your website content, for example, that is appropriate. Also, some of you are wondering, what do I do with my current pricing strategies, for example? Well, the best advice that I can give right now is to be thinking about creative and flexible pricing strategies. For example, you might consider a free strategy meeting with a customer and before you develop a longer range contract, and you might have some sort of escalating free services or advice before that is a reward for a longer term contract, for example. So whatever the case might be in your organization, think about what you can do right now. There will be an expectation. And for those of you who've been through the 2008 recession, everybody knows during that period, there was a very long period where people expected something for free. The key is that you do it in a way that there is still a high level of respect for the value that you bring, and that the free doesn't last forever, that perhaps it's upfront or first purchase or whatever the case might be. But so get creative and think about that. And then finally, I want to mention, for those of you who already are working with a marketing team or have an in-house marketing team, I still continue to see pre-planned blog posts or e-blasts that are coming out that you can tell were pre-coronavirus period. And when, it's really important to go back and check your queue, your social media posts and so on, to think about the new normal now in terms of the kind of information that our audiences are looking to seek. Because if you don't and you have old messages, it makes you look less sophisticated, it makes you look insensitive. So it's important that you take a look at that. So I want to end today on some communication tips in communicating in the new normal. So as I mentioned earlier, revisit your mission and values, and it's important to ask your team to reconnect with the whole purpose of your organization and the vision of your company. And when you reconnect with your vision and your mission and your values, tough news that you need to deliver can be accepted better. So many of you are wondering, if I do need to lay off an employee or employees, furlough employees, for example, how do I deliver that tough news? You know, I think the best way, it will vary by the industry and the organization and the position, but it's important that the news be delivered with compassion and empathy, and also that that you consider delivering bad news in bundles, for example. So if you're making new decisions every day and then communicating a bad decision every day or every other day, that's really tough on any team or any business to feel confident that their job is going to be secured. So it's important, as you make those decisions, to communicate it all at once to anyone that's impacted by the tough news, and then wait at least another 2 weeks if you have additional tough news that you need to communicate, so that you're not delivering tough news every day. That's really hard for a team, and they'll lose confidence. And so also it's important to stay transparent and open. Have regular check-ins with your team, share what you do know, and be honest about what you don't know. Some organizations, especially larger organizations, are setting up a Zoom hour or a Google Hangouts hour where they open the office of the CEO, the president of the organization, to answer any employee's questions. So consider doing that at least once a week. Also, it's important to remember when you're communicating on video to communicate just a little bit slower on video than you might communicate in person. It's because the individual on the other end can't see your whole body language. They process information a little bit more slowly. So remember that as you're communicating. And then I mentioned earlier, remember the strengths of the tools. In terms of talking on video, be front and center versus being really far away from the camera, and see the difference and how that makes. Understand your body language, for example. Being front and center in your video just presents better. Also, to understand what your background looks like. Do you have distracting things happening in your background that are going to distract your message as you're trying to communicate it as a leader? Some of you have these really cool backdrops that have different environments. I think those are really awesome too. So, but just be aware of how your background is being presented. So, with that, I'm going to open it up to Q&A in the last 10 minutes of our call. What questions do you have that I can answer?
Linda, we can take those questions. They can type those out on the chat.
Okay.
And that way you can see them and answer them. So if anybody does have questions, please go to your chat feature and write down any questions you may have of Linda.
Not a question, but I want to compliment you. Excellent presentation. Linda, thank you very, very much. This is extremely useful to all of us.
Thank you, Jack.
Talking about backgrounds.
I love it. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Maybe while we're waiting for those questions, verbally, I would love to talk to folks on the call today. Who has a, shoot away, who has a question?
I see a couple that are coming through on chat. I don't know if those are
Okay,
coming through for
I
everyone.
see it. Okay, first question. What are your recommendations for teams that are balancing kids, family, work? What has seemed to work? You know, as leaders, I think it's important that we show empathy for the new normal of our teams and what they're having to deal with. Suddenly you're a parent and you are sitting there across your table because perhaps you don't have an office to work from, and right across the table from you is one or more children working on their homework and having issues with their video conferencing, or they need help with their homework. So all of a sudden you're a full-time or a part-time teacher homeschooling your children, and that's got to be very difficult. So the key is to encourage your team to communicate and let you know what's going on with them at home. And if you're able to help that team member in terms of adjusting their work hours or doing some of their work at night, or whatever the case might be, now is a time to be really flexible. If it can't be done on different hours, then look at how you can adjust and move some of the work around among your team.
We have another question for you on your chat.
Sure. Okay, next question. If you make a business critical decision and things change, you need to make a different decision. How do you handle that? How do you communicate the change in direction to your team, and examples? I think what's really important is in the planning process that we talked about earlier when I had listed several questions that were important. The important thing is to engage your team in the information gathering and sharing, and communicate the information that you all agree is mission critical, and make those decisions together with your team. Now, it's not possible sometimes to make every decision by consensus. At the end of the day, the leader responsible for the business success has to make the final decision, and sometimes it may not be the most popular decision, but it has to be the right decision. And when I referred to building trust among your team earlier, if you've built that trust and you have the respect amongst your team, then they understand that you made the best decision that you possibly could with the information that you have at the time that you have. And it's also important too that you let everybody know that if new information comes in and you need to pivot and change course, that everybody needs to get on that roller coaster with you and go along for the ride, because it's going to be like this for some time. Okay, let's see. Any other questions? I don't believe I see any other questions. Well, if not, thank you all for being here with me today. I hope that this was informative and it will help your business reimagine and pivot and help you successfully navigate through this new normal that we find ourselves all in. So thank you, everyone.
Linda, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.